I had this hunch about this movie after seeing the trailer about where exactly I thought the plot was going to go, and I wanted to know, hey, what happened to the lights? Hey, everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talking Books. Wait, something's not right here. Hey everybody, what's going on? Welcome to an all-new Talkin Movies. As always, I am your host, the real Geno Reynolds, and today we're going to be talking about Danny Boyle's new movie, Yesterday. I'll warn you, I'm probably going to talk spoilers in this movie. You pretty much know what the whole movie is about by seeing the trailer, but there is some things that I do want to discuss. Would I recommend this movie for those that don't want it spoiled? Would I recommend it? Yes, but it's not a rush to the theaters to go see. It's definitely a rental. So what this movie is about, there's a struggling musician named Jack and his manager, Ellie. And during or after one of his final performances, he goes on a nighttime bike ride and all the power in the world goes off and he gets hit by a bus. When Jack wakes up, he makes comments about the Beatles, and nobody knows what he's talking about. So he thinks at first everyone's playing a big joke on him, but then he finally comes to realize that he's the only person in the world that knows who the Beatles are. So even though he doesn't feel real confident about it, he decides that he is going to write or rewrite the music of the Beatles and release it himself. And what happens after that is kind of the basis of the entire story. My hunch for this movie was, after seeing the trailer, I'm like, oh, he's in a coma, and he's gonna wake up at the end, and everything's gonna be back to normal. Because you see that part with James Corden in the trailer where they're like, there's two men that say they written all the songs, right? And I thought that's where he was going to wake up, and then he's going to realize, oh, he does, even though he didn't succeed as a musician, he still has this girl that loves him, right? So I thought that's how it was going to go. In a way, I was happy it didn't. And I knew it wasn't going to go that way shortly after the incident with where the power goes out happened. Because not only do people not remember the Beatles, but he asks for a Coke, and there's no Coke, no Coca-Cola. Just like whenever he searched for Beatles and just the bugs came up, he searched for Coke, and it talked about like Pablo Escobar and things like that. And it happens a few times during this movie. There's a few things that don't exist in this world. So it's not just the Beatles. And in a way, I was happy that was the case, because while it would be a really strange thing for just to be the one thing, that would put a little bit too much importance on the Beatles. Now, don't get me wrong. I know they were the band of a generation, and I get that. Here's the thing, and this, I don't want this to catch me some hate, because I like the Beatles, but I don't have this connection to the Beatles that a lot of people do. I get why people do, but I just don't have that. So I couldn't see them being this one catalyst that would disappear, right? There was other huge things that disappeared, and the first thing other than the Beatles that were gone was Coke. And I'm like, how does that connect to the Beatles? And if there is a connection, let me know in the comments. I'm really curious. But I'm like trying to find the connection, but then something else was missing. I'm like, wait, that definitely doesn't connect to the Beatles. But then there's one that is. Whenever he mentions the song Wonderwall, there's no Oasis. Because I mean, let's be honest. I mean, they're trying to be the Beatles, right? So don't get me wrong, I like Oasis, but it's just kind of funny. It's like, oh, there's no Oasis because there was no Beatles. So there is some connections. Here's the biggest problem I had, though. Okay, again, I understand why people love the Beatles. And the movie doesn't go full on, the Beatles are everything, right? Because they do have things that they address that wouldn't work today, where he's trying to come up with the name for this album, and he comes up with some of the names that the Beatles had for their albums, and they're just kind of laughing it off, like, that's too long, or the White Album, how silly is that, things like that. So they do some of that stuff. That being said, when it comes to the songs, look, again, I enjoy the Beatles music. I don't own any Beatles albums. I've never just been a big fan of theirs. I don't hate them. I don't think their music's garbage. In fact, I think their music's pretty good. But I didn't connect with them. And that's what I'm wondering is, would people today connect with the Beatles the way they did back then? I mean, this movie is taking place now. And that, of course, played into my theory of where it's all in his mind and he's in a coma or something like that, but he's not. So this is happening. So it's like the butterfly effect doesn't really work for me. First of all, again, it handled some things good, handled some things others, but I mean, there's just so many things missing that I don't feel the butterfly effect work, but you can kind of forget that. But there's a part where, Ed Sheeran, who plays himself in this movie, hears Jack singing one of these songs and he falls in love with it. And I get that, but it's just weird because, yeah, the song's good, but is he really going to give it more of a chance at this point in time as he did hearing it from someone from the past? It just makes me wonder about the music, because they do handle some of the music pretty well, though, because he's trying to find the inspiration for stuff from Liverpool and things like that, where it really doesn't mean a lot to him, but it meant a lot to the Beatles. So they do talk about that stuff, and I did like it when they did that, where they kind of he can't find the inspiration they found, and he's struggling to find inspiration that he can call his own, so he can release the song or whatever. So that gets kind of iffy. But yeah, I always just wondered, well, what would people feel the same way today if the songs just came out today? Would they feel the same way that they did back then? It was a different time. Different things were going on. There's, make love, not war. There's the drug culture. There's all that stuff that, I don't know. I don't think a lot of these songs, I mean, they may be somewhat catchy today, but I don't think they would blow up like they did back then. I could be wrong, but it's just, I don't feel that way. I don't feel like they would. So that part kind of didn't work for me. Because just some of the songs, some of the types of music he's playing is, it just feels, I don't want to say outdated, but it feels of its time, I guess is what I'm really trying to say. That being said, I still did like the story they were telling, when it was working, when they were, showing that maybe this wouldn't work today and things like that. I also felt, in a way, that they were going to set up the John Lennon storyline, where someone would kill Jack. I thought maybe that's how he'd come out of his coma, like he'd be killed. They'd do the Mark David Chapman thing. Because they do show someone like watching him and kind of looking at him with those eyes, but that turns out to be, there's a few more people in the world that remember the Beatles, and they're just happy that he's getting the songs out there. So there's that. And I thought that worked pretty well, but it's just like, but then with all this other stuff missing, are other people going to remember Coke? Or are they not? Or do these people remember the things that he remembers? They remember everything, because they don't really explain what happened. It's just the power goes out, and all of a sudden, he remembers things. And some of these other people remember things. Were they in comas, or were they in the hospital too? Were they in comas? There's just, the story doesn't feel complete, and I know that they just feel that they don't have to explain it, that it's just, this is the world now. And I guess you can get away with that, but I would have liked a little something. I did like that, even though in a way it felt a little incomplete, because they didn't show the other Beatles, but they do show what happened to John Lennon, because he didn't become famous. Bigger than Jesus, as they say. So they show what happens to him, and I really liked what they did there. That being said, what happened to the other three? Did George still pass away when he did? Things like that. I would have liked to have known, did Mark David Chapman go after somebody else instead of John Lennon? There's just little bits and pieces of this butterfly effect stuff that I would have liked to have known about this world. So there's that. And one thing that really bothered me was they did a dream sequence in the movie. It's the James Corden part, because all of a sudden it just bumps back, and it just felt, and again, that kind of was supporting in a way, it's all in his head kind of thing, but it's like, oh, a dream within a dream kind of thing. So I wasn't sure what they were doing. I didn't like that they did the dream sequence. I get why they did it. And it was more like a daydream, because he wasn't even sleeping. He was in a recording studio, just kind of sitting there like this. But no, all in all, I thought this was a decent movie. Again, a lot of the butterfly effect stuff bothered me, and there's just things that you want to know. But then again, there's other stories there, because again, Coke doesn't exist. I don't remember all of them, but every time you'd be like, wait, this doesn't exist, and you'd see him typing in Google, where's this, and what comes up. There was a big one at the very end that, in a way, I'm not saying it's teasing a sequel, but it's teasing that the story could continue, that he could use something else to become big. But of course he's kind of just learning. It's like, nah, I'm fine the way I am. And it's a big one, that they kind of tease. So, but all in all, I thought this was an alright movie. Maybe if I were a bigger fan of the Beatles, I might appreciate it just a little more. I did like the story they were telling, especially whenever they weren't just making things really easy for our character. I mean, our character was always at odds with what he was doing, but everyone around him was like, oh, this is the greatest music ever. Oh, this is the greatest music ever. Oh, this is the greatest music ever. And that part didn't work for me. But when things weren't working, again, when he's trying to name the albums and things like that, and they're kind of, putting the now spin on the record industry, where you can just kind of tell, it's the young man's game. But yeah, that stuff worked for me. But again, I don't think it's a rush to the movie theater to go see it. It's a good movie. It's not great. The music's good, because, it's the Beatles. But is the movie like this fantastic movie? No. But it is a really good movie, and I would suggest it as a rental. That's going to be all for this edition of Talkin Movies. If you like what you've heard here, please subscribe to the Real Geno YouTube channel, like this video, and if you have anything to say about the movie yesterday, please feel free to leave a comment in the section below. Until next time, I'm your host, the Real Geno, Geno Reynolds, and we all live in a yellow submarine.